Alright, so next I'm going to try out melee units against the same Paladin Arbalest composition. So a lot of the infantry units don't do as well as you'd probably expect. They don't do particularly well because well, Paladins are a good unit for a reason in team games. So I guess we can start with Teutonic Knights. Perhaps they're quite expensive, but so we've only got 41 of these units. Compared to 40 Paladins, so they're only slightly cheaper, really. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. I need to change this up though. Oh, I forgot something else. I need to change the because this is a slow unit. I need to change when they engage. Actually, I'll show you again more clearly the reason why I changed it. Because if both of these units move forward at the same speed, look where they engage. They engage here when they should be engaging about here to be in between the units. So that's why I need to change it. Turn that off. Okay, there we go. So we've got Teutonic Knights against Paladin. Of course, Teutonic Knights actually beat Paladin one-on-one. So they're pretty impressive in melee combat, but they're very slow, and they do have a bit of pierce armor, but they don't have they're not as tanky against archer fire as Paladin. So you can see there was a few Paladin fighting Arbalest early, but the Teutonic Knights actually didn't do too badly, all things considered. And they're often regarded as a bit of a meme, unique unit, but they're not actually too terrible. Once you actually get them in a fight, they're pretty good. I'll just finish off the Arbalest battle. Yeah, you can still see the Paladin are winning, but and by the fact it's not a really close battle, but even so, like the Teutonic Knights are not too badly. Alright, so then I got the champion units. I'm debating about how many different battles to do with them. I think I might just do one or two. Now, of course, because supplies as well, you get quite a lot of these for the price. 2, 3, 4. That's what, like 50. That's 57, I think, from memory. Well, and counting. So we'll try one of the better. Let's try Vikings or which I mean, let's do Vikings. I think I want to do one test of this because Champion's not usually regarded as one of the better units, and we're probably about to see why. But maybe they'll surprise us. See, probably not too surprising to people that the Paladin won, but I feel like Japan actually didn't do too terribly. There's about 10 Paladin left, maybe even slightly less than that. Finish off the Arbalest battle quickly. Champions actually did remarkably well compared to previously tested them, but the Viking champions do have extra health as well as attack bonus on top of that. I might try. I'll show a normal champion civ as well. We'll get the comparison, and you can see. Incas have fully upgraded Paladin. Oh, sorry, Champion with no additional bonuses. So we'll see how they go. So yeah, you can see they did not do brilliantly. There's maybe 15 paladins left. So yeah, champion, generally not the best unit for your standard team gaming composition. The Viking ones did okay, so I'll give credit to them there, but even so, unless you're Vikings and you kind of don't have many other options, you can probably want to use a different unit if you can. Speaking of Vikings, we're going to try our Bezerkers. Now, Bezerkers cost the same as Keshiks, and where are the Keshiks? There we go, there they are. And a lot of these unique units do. They all cost 90 resources. So they all have 50 armies, 50 units in their army. Make sure I'm Vikings again. Let's try out the Bezerkers. They're often hyped up as a pretty good unit for anti-cavalry damage, and they have pretty decent PS armor as well. The additional PS armor and melee armor, so we'll see how they do. Alright, can see about 10, maybe even 12 paladin left in the end there, so even though Berserkers have their anti-cavalry damage, they are still not the best unit for a composition like this. You're much better having paladin in the front line, as you can see. Might even have some paladin left at the end, maybe not, but even so, you got all the arbalists left there. So yeah, they definitely didn't do badly, but like most infantry units, they yeah, they're not the best. Not the best compared to Paladin anyway. So that's why you don't really see... Well, Berserkers, you see a bit of Berserkers on team games actually, and that's probably because they'll do a bit better in this fight if the Arbalists weren't here. But, and they are a bit cheaper on gold, so you don't need trade to get so many of them. But, in spite of those advantages, they're still not ideal as the game goes later on. So now we got Kamayuks, and Kamayuks are definitely known for being anti-cavalry, and they have their courier's unique tick as well, which gives them some extra PS armor, which was why it's important to have Incas here. So with 50 of them against 40 paladin, and we'll see how it goes. And look at those beasts go. Ooh. Kamayuks actually won that battle. We'll see how the Arbalisk battle goes. Yeah, so you can see the Arbalisk, the Kamayuks are definitely a good unit. They are the only infantry unit we've looked at so far anyway, which has got the better of the Paladin. So yeah, definitely a good unit. Of course it requires castles and all that stuff, but yeah, that's low gold cost as well, so yeah, beastly unit. Definitely pretty good for team game compositions, even though they're not quite as good against arrows as Paladin. Still pretty good with the attack bonus against cavalry. I'll try out. Yeah, I got Woad Warriors next. So again, 50 of them because a lot of these infantry units have very similar costs. So they're a fast infantry unit, which does help against archers by themselves, but we'll see. They don't really have exceptional stats or anything like the Berserkers, and they don't have any massive attack bonus against Paladins, so I maybe should have actually. Oh, they're fighting more or less in the middle, maybe slightly closer to the Paladin. You can see they did not do well. There's at least 15, maybe about 15 paladin anyway, left here. I realised I probably should have changed the attack distance from where they battle, but even so, the paladins still win. So I'm not going to worry about doing that test again, just for that. But yeah, paladins clear domination on my warriors. So we've got samurai. They have, they're of course the Japanese, so they have quite a good attack speed. But otherwise they're pretty similar to a champion kind of unit. But of course they have bonus against unique units, which doesn't come into play here. So again, Paladin doing very well against them. Maybe 10 Paladin left around about. So they did better than the Woad Warriors, but yeah, still. Infantry melee unit, probably want to avoid, at least most of the infantry units we've looked at so far, compared to Paladin. If you have a Paladin, so if you want them in the front line, most of the time. So Incas are the main exception we've seen so far. Arguably Teutonic Knights did okay as well. So now we're going to get to Halberdiers. Halberdiers, of course, are a unit which counters... make sure I'm using the right ones as well, because I believe there's 60 of these units. Yeah, there's 60 of these. Due to the fact that they're pretty cheap. We'll try out normal halberdiers first. So, what's this? Chinese get normal halberdiers. So, of course, they have a really good attack bonus in its cavalry, but they take bonus damage from arbalest, so they're very weak to them. So you can see there again, Paladin's dominating these units. So just because Halberdiers are a good unit against Paladin by themselves, potentially, does not mean they're a good unit against Paladin in a team composition. And in fact, 40 Paladin will defeat 60 Halberdiers even without ranged assistance. So that kind of puts things in perspective. In your traditional team game, Paladin better than your normal Halberdiers, even without ranged units. Once you have, like, of course, a trade going up. So that's definitely something to keep in mind, as well as the fact that Paladin are faster. And the other thing with this battle, which I didn't simulate, is you can micro your Paladin a lot more than your Halberdiers to force them closer to the arbalest before engaging. And this wasn't really shown here to too much of a degree. I'm basically just let units patrol in as they are. I need to try some better halberdiers though, so I'll try Japanese, which have the best, well, they have the strongest individual halberdier units. Still a halberdier stuck there actually, but most of them are dead. You can see that are actually quite a bit better than normal halberdiers. Is there another? No, okay, I just started on arrow. There's still about 10 Paladin left, maybe slightly less at this stage, but yeah, you can see the Paladin's still better even than Japanese halberdiers, with the arbalest behind both of them. And again, you can micro your Paladin a lot more, so in an actual game, you'd probably have more Paladin than this left as well. So Japanese halbs definitely a lot better than your normal halberdiers, but still not really a good idea for these compositions. What was I going to try next? So it's the halberdiers. Now we're going to try some eagle units. Or we could try Goth. Let's try Goth units first. And then we'll come to the eagles a bit later. So, of course, this is Goth halberdiers. So we're going to have an absolutely massive number of them. Let's see about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, that's 73 halberdiers. And that's even with, of course, we have both cost and pop efficiency taken into account, basically, effectively. So even with some population efficiency taken into account, you've got almost double the number. So That's pretty crazy. But do bear in mind they had Goths missed the last defense upgrade, so they have quite a bit less pierce armor than other halberdiers. So we'll see how this fight goes. Some of the halberds didn't react because there's too many of them to get in all one patrol, but they're in the fight now, so that's fine. Alright, so you can see they have pretty much similar results to Japanese actually. With about 8 or so paladin left alive here at the end. So yeah, of course not as good as paladin still, but as a frontline unit. But and of course you can debate the fire a bit more with your paladins, of course, by microing a lot more. But the Goth and Japanese Halbs both did decently, I would say. Definitely. Definitely, like, not a replacement for Paladin as a frontline unit, but if you don't have gold, I guess they're, if you're Goths or Japanese Halbs, they'll do okay-ish. I'm gonna try, since I'm Goths already, let's try pure Huskarl. So I believe that's about, I can't remember how many units that is. Oh, I might have to look later, but that's quite a lot. Let's just say that much. I do need to get rid of these halbs first, though. If they don't aggro straight away, we'll see. So Huskarls are the kind of the opposite of halberdiers, where they're really good against the range fire, but they're not so good in the melee combat. They don't have any bonuses against paladin, but they look at that pierce armor, so they're only taking 1 damage from these arbalest. Again, because there's so many units, a few of them react quite slow. But that's because I can only have so many units in a patrol group. But they get into the fight anyway, so it's fine. Okay, so we can see we actually got more paladins left than we had against the halberdiers. We've got about 15 maybe paladin left. So yeah, because the Huskarls do so poorly against the paladin, even though the arbalists are doing less damage to them, they are not doing so well. I've got to say, in defense of the Huskarls, when you're in an actual battle, in an actual game, you cannot micro your paladin against them, like to debate the fire as much as you can with halberdiers. So even though they look like they're not doing so well here, you can abuse the fact that the halberdiers have so little resistance to archer fire a lot more than you can against Huskarls, because of course Huskarls are even tankier than paladins against arbalest fire. So yeah, you have that going for the Huskarl. But even so, yeah, not as good as paladin frontline. So, and by the way, I should note for when I'm using these Goth units as well, I'm taking into account they have an extra 10 population. So they have a 210 population effect as well. So that adds a few more units to their compositions. They only had 70 halbs, I think, and then they have 3 more from that, basically. So, given how neither of these compositions did absolutely brilliantly, and because it's quite traditional for a Goth player to do a mixed composition, I decided to do a mix of halberdiers and Huskarls, and we'll see how that'll do. So this composition will have a combination of units which do great against the front line. Oh, might need to raise some units first, hang on. So basically just half the number of Huskarls and halberdiers and then put them together, basically. That's how I got this army. So of course you got a combination of halbs which do great against the melee units, and then you got some Huskarls in the mix which do great against the archer units. And this is probably I guess is what you would call the scary Goth flood. Just making sure I'm still on Goths. This is what people go on about when they're talking about Goth flood or the nightmare composition. It is lighter on gold than these paladin. That is another advantage. So we'll see how this goes. Alright, so we can see it actually went about the same as the pure Huskarl. There's still about 15 paladin left. So yeah, even the Nightmare Goth composition, not really a match for paladin, and with the even with the arbalest behind them and stuff like that. Yeah, that's just paladin. Paladin are better. That's all I can say. The Goth composition, to be fair, is a bit lighter on gold, so you don't need as much trade. You only maybe need the sorry, I'm stumbling on my words. You only maybe need about 20, 30 trade carts as Goths, whereas a Paladin Civs needs 60, so you do have that advantage. But of course, Paladin have the movement speed advantage, and as you can see from this fight, they did better. There's nothing else to it, really. The last thing to try is Goth Champion. There are a lot of them, I'm just going to say that. There are a lot of Champion. Not as many as we had Halberdiers, but of course they take quite a few more arrows than Halberdiers do. I'm not even going to count them. I just remembered this a lot. Yeah, and again we got a Paladin victory. So Goth Champion didn't do too badly. There's maybe 10, 12 Paladin left or something like that. I'm just guesstimating. So yeah, Paladin, of course, better than Champion composition. I gotta say the Champions actually didn't do too badly, so I'll say that for their defense. Like Champions usually have a pretty low regard, and the Goth Champions didn't do too much worse than the other compositions of the Goths. Of course, again, you have the problem where even though they're better against range fire than Halberdiers, they're still pretty bad against it. So Paladin can potentially avoid engaging for a bit, and then you take more arrows. So they wouldn't be as good in reality, but even so, not too bad. Okay, that's all the Goth compositions. Next we're gonna do Eagles. So let's get. I've got 3 Eagle civs, so I'll go through all of them and I'll see how they do. I was about to raise all the Eagles. That would not be a good idea. Champions get raised. Let's make sure. Yeah, I still got all the obelisks there, don't I? Yes. So this is about. This is actually less than units than we had for the champion, because with supplies you actually get more champion than you get eagles. But I think that's what 56 units, I think. And we've got Aztecs. So let's try Aztec Eagles against Paladin. Aztecs get their +4 attack on the Eagles. See, I'm going to stop this here actually because I realised I need to change something back. Because Eagles are a faster unit. So we need to switch to having it so they move at the same, they moved from the engagement at the same time. Because Paladins are only slightly faster than Eagles, so this is just to get their engagement going properly. Here we go, Aztec Eagles against Paladin. With both having arbalists behind. Okay, and we can see there still about 10, maybe even 12 Paladin left over, something like that. You can see the Aztec Eagles, even though they're an infantry unit which has a small bonus against Paladin, and they have extra attack being Aztecs, and pretty good pierce armor, they're still not a match for the Paladin. That's just because the Paladin are more pop efficient, really. So, yeah, basically the 57 Eagles, Aztecs losing to the Paladin of the it's a fully upgraded Paladin. So we'll try Incas now. Incas have no extra attack over normal Eagles, but they have extra PS armor, so they're only taking 1 damage from the opponent's obelisk. So they're actually tankier than the paladin against the archer fire. Yeah, you can see quite a few paladins left over. Some of these were actually fighting arbalists before the eagles were dead, so you'll probably have about 10 to 12, about the same as the Aztecs had left over, maybe even slightly more than the Aztecs left over. So again, paladin beating the eagles. Eagles, of course, are doing pretty well for an infantry unit, but they're still not the most pop efficient. So for that reason, even with more numbers, they're not really a match in that case. So we will try now the Mayan Eagles though. We'll see how they do. Mayans of course have an extra 40 health on their Eagles. So that means they're both tankier against both the Arbalist and the Paladin. See, this fight was a bit closer. I'm actually going to run it through all the Arbalest fight because there was some Eagles and some Paladin fighting Arbalest before the battle was over. So I'll speed it up though. As you can see, this battle was actually very close. The Paladin still came up better, but they've only got like, what, maybe 10, 12 Arbalests? Or was it 14 or something at the end? So yeah, the Mayan Eagles are actually doing very well. Might even do a repeat test of that and see how they go. Again. I'm going to stick on 2 times speed rather than faster in the initial fight because I have a feeling it might affect the results slightly. And I prefer to keep it accurate if I can. None of the units are fighting Arbalest yet, so that's good. I'm fighting them now. Actually got some Eagles left at the end. That's thanks to some of the Paladin fighting the Arbalest early. I'll speed it up again for the Arbalest fight. It might affect it slightly, but I'm not as worried about it. So yeah, pretty similar result actually. Again, the Paladin player just coming up better. But you can see Mayan Eagles are actually doing remarkably well. For an infantry unit, they were definitely one of the best. I would say. I know there's a thing with Eagles where if it's purely cost efficiency, then Mayan Eagles are actually better than Paladin, so that's pretty cool as well. With both cost and pop efficiency, you can see the Paladin is slightly better still, but yeah, they still did a pretty good job. And because they did pretty strong, I am going to try a different composition, which is Mayan Eagles and Halbs mixed together, and see if that does any better. The Halberdiers will tank less damage, but I might need to remove these first. The Halberdiers tank less damage, but they do more to the Paladin. And they're a bit cheaper. Actually, are they cheaper? Yeah, they're a bit slightly cheaper. So we'll see if this test has a different result. Okay, so the different result was they seem to be doing a bit worse. So having the Hells in the mix doesn't actually help the Eagles out much, or at all rather. It kind of weakens the composition if anything. So yeah, you can see much easier victory for the Paladins. So in fact, if you're a man player, you're better off doing pure eagles if you can afford it with trade, than doing eagle halb mix. But of course, eagle halb mix is a lot lighter on gold, so you might have to do that until you get like 80 carts or something that you probably need to afford it. So yeah, I think those are all the infantry units I'm going to go over. There's a few units I haven't covered in all these, but most of them are things which would either be completely obvious that they're better than a similar unit. For example, I didn't try Frank Paladin because they're obviously going to be a bit better than normal Paladin, or they're so weak that they basically had no chance. I think I have a few of them in the corner. Condottiero is basically just worse than Champion in these sort of fights. The speed doesn't make much of a difference. Jaguar has a bonus against infantry, doesn't really matter. Magyar Hussar is just a trash unit basically. Sorry, I mean that as in there's a pure food unit, so given they cost no gold, they don't really, they're not really expected to do so well. Shotel and Karambit are both, I think, won't do particularly great. You can see actually that Woad Raiders did pretty terribly, and I believe Karambits will do even worse than them. So, yeah. Since they've been nerfed, Karambits, no, they were nerfed quite a while ago, but since then, Karambits have not been particularly brilliant. So yeah, I think those are most of the units I want to try out. So you can see from the infantry that Teutonic Knights didn't do too badly. Same with me and Eagles. But the only infantry unit which actually was good in these compositions and they actually defeated the Paladin was the Kamayuk. So Kamayuk is probably the only infantry unit you really want to have as a frontline unit against Paladin. Some of these other units, of course, like have their uses. Like the Berserker has still does reasonably well, and of course they're a lot cheaper on gold than normal Paladin. And it's not like Vikings get Paladin anyway, so you can't really make Viking Paladin, so you might as well make Berserker. So there is that. I guess the Japanese and Goth Halberdiers did okay. Given that they don't have Paladin with uses, I mean, if you got a good archer ally, you might use them as well. I think pretty much conclude off by saying I might try and do like one where I'm testing range units instead of melee units at some point. The difficulty comes with the way I'm testing it, where I'm basically combining pop and cost efficiency. Because range units you don't really lose them as much, it's arguable whether that's the best way to test it or not, because you could possibly even say that pop efficiency alone is the best way to determine range units. And then it's just a matter of getting to like the numbers that matters, right? So you could have 80 arbalists and 80 war wagons, say, as range units, and even though the war wagons take longer to get to, once you get to their army, you're probably not replacing them too much because it's mainly the melee units fighting. So you could argue that you should allow 80 war wagons against 80 arbalists rather than say 60, which would, or even less, which I might even decide. Actually, by the way, these aren't 80 arbalists, they're 70. I remember that. Part of the reason I'm using lower numbers is because basically you can only have a certain amount in a patrol group, which is 60 units. You could even see with some of the Goth compositions I was having trouble because there's more units in here than 60. So that's the reason I basically decided to half my numbers I was doing. I'll go back to this. So you can see here I divided by 2 to get all these numbers here. I worked it out for all the other units as well. I just didn't write it out as beautifully as this. Well, not beautifully, but I didn't write out all the things in like the correct mathematical way. So I haven't really put them around because I basically just worked most of it out in my head and then just I worked it out in my head, but while writing stuff down. So it's basically just gibberish for the other ones, more or less. So yeah, for range units, I'm not sure if I could use the same formula and it would be as accurate, but I think I could still do it. It just wouldn't be as close to reality for a team game unit. Sorry, for like how units interact in a team game. Anyway, I think I'm gonna finish off there with all I'm talking about here.